Good morning, everyone. Merry, not so stupid o'clock. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And the only reason why I am up this early on the last day of my particular weekend is because my dumbass, when I went to the store again, forgot the freaking birthday candles for the cheesecake. Yes, I know. I'm doing the cake way after the birthday. Some of us are broke. Just saying. We're going back to that horrible world this morning known as the JRC. But before we get going, folks, a few disclaimers and a wee bit of a warning. There will be other videos today. I just wanted to get this one taken care of, get my calm down walk in, get my cleaning in, and then we were going to go into the JD versus AH case and a few other things, of course. This is what my weekends are for. So we are moving on. JRC program model and operations. Now for the disclaimers. First off, you are going to find a link to this investigative document right there in the description box, alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including the templates and the ever-present change.org, Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. Also, folks, when we are talking about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you have young children present, please, folks, use your headphones, use your head, all right? Also, obviously, I'm in a babbling kind of mood, so if I stumble over my sentences this morning, my apologies, folks, in advance, all right? So, we are going to go where we left off. Remember, this is the investigative report from the New York City Department of Education after the incident and the lawsuit that followed the Evelyn and Antoine Nicholson versus the JRC and Freeport School District case. So, let's continue to go over the results, shall we? I'll try to keep my ranting down to the minimum, but no promises. The behavioral program model at JRC is based on a Skinnerian behavioral approach and does not differentiate between the treatment of students with psychiatric or developmentally related childhood disorders. Oh my God, thank you, somebody said it. One of the worst things you can do as a practitioner of medicine is treat completely unrelated diagnoses at the exact same. It's beyond stupid. It is absolutely medical malpractice, in my opinion, as well as a few other things. Names I can't think of this early in the morning, let's be honest here. It is absolutely stupid, negligent, and dangerous to treat completely different diagnoses with the exact same type of treatment. It is the definition of stupidity. But moving on. Instead, childhood disorders are viewed as learned behavior disorders, which can be corrected through behavior modification techniques. This is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my life, and I've heard some whoppers in my time, especially even when I was still out in the field in a more official capacity. It is beyond insane, the concept that these are learned behavior disorders. What is this shit? Okay. When you have a neurological disability, it's not a learned behavior. It is how our brain is firing and our reaction to it. Okay? These are not willful behaviors coming out of us that you can just beat it out of us? What kind of freaking messed up 1920s, 1800s, Spanish Inquisition, medieval ages crap medicine is this? Really? Really? You remember, folks, many years ago, we're talking mid to late 90s, this research was done to prove that spanking children does not correct behavior, right? How much more is it true that corporal punishment cannot and will not fix behaviors that are not coming from a willful decision to act so, but that happen due to the firings off in the brain? Those mental firings, based on our diagnosis, do not change simply because you beat the shit out of us or torture us for it. God. Instead, childhood disorders are viewed as learned behavior disorders, which can be corrected through behavior modification techniques. By the way, the JRC are not the only ones who subscribe to this bullshit. What do you think ABA is? Yeah, they start ABA with the false conclusion that we are engaging in these behaviors to seek attention. It doesn't even begin to enter these people's scope of mind that these behaviors might come from the fact that this is how our brains are firing. And there is no behavior modification technique that is going to change how my brain functions. Just saying. Psychotropic medication is discouraged at JRC, and currently only a small number of students with severe psychiatric diagnoses are receiving medication for symptoms associated with their psychiatric conditions. For the idiots in the back, when you are dealing with a neurological disorder, or even a mental illness that is due to some form of chemical balance or chemical imbalance. Blah, I can't think today. Psychotropic medication can save a fucking life. I know because I've seen it in my official capacity, being around hospitals and healthcare my entire life due to both my parents. I've seen it work. And why do they work? Because unlike behavior modification, medicine works almost as a supplement, if you will, to help connect the pieces that are maybe not correctly meeting together. You know what I mean? It works in a capacity that behavior modification never can, because it is actually addressing the issues directly. All right? Okay, good. I'm glad you came to my TED Talk. Referral and admission practices. A review of student records revealed that in a number of instances, the family of the student became aware of JRC's program as a result of their child's psychiatric hospitalization. Do go on, New York. Do go on. JRC's marketing representatives provide information through presentations to staff at some NYS psychiatric facilities that in turn discuss the program with the families. JRC's marketing representatives visit the family in their homes and, as indicated in the representative's case notes, provide the family with information and gifts for the family and the student. Oh my dear God. Are you a school? Or are you actually a sales corporation? Get a goodie bag. Like what are you? What are you doing there? Are you a timesharesman? You gonna give them a vacation if they buy into your bullshit? Dear God. A review of JRC's internal IEP admission checklist states that the staff eliminate, where possible, related service recommendations. For example, an admission waiting list form was observed that included a box, drop speech OT with handwritten note, if at all possible, next to it. What the fuck? Oh, you don't want them to speak because they might tell everyone what you're doing there. I get it now. Can't have them talking out. Right. Prior to or upon admission, many students, JRC informs the school district to include a statement on the student's IEPs that JRC will be seeking court-authorized Level 3 interventions to include movement limitation procedures and the graduated electronic decelerator to treat aggression, health dangerous, destructive, major disruptive, and non-compliant behaviors. I'm sorry, parents, but if my mom had read that shit, she'd be like, oh, hell no. What are you trying to do? Brainwash my daughter? Get the fuck out of my house. Yeah, JRC wouldn't know what to do with someone like my mom, who's been in medical circles since longer than a good majority of their staff has been alive. Just saying. Saying is all. Determination of the need for adversive interventions. JRC may decide prior to a student's acceptance into the program that he/she requires adversive procedures based on historical and current behavioral information provided by the parents, CSE, and other records reports. The school districts and the parent are informed that JRC will seek a court order through the substituted judgment process to use adversive procedures that include the use of skin shock, manual and mechanical restraints, helmets, and contingent food or specialized food programs. I'm sure that they sugarcoat the hell out of it because no fucking parent is going to agree to have their kids tortured and starved and sleep deprived. At least I would hope not. Parents are asked to sign an informed consent for JRC to use the adversive procedures and for JRC to seek the court order to use adversives. The school district and parents are informed that the use of adversive procedures may be a condition of the student's acceptance and continued enrollment in the program. Oh my God. So we already know from past videos and further research that these folks target desperate, poor families who live in neighborhoods where there are almost nigh to zero other programs that they would be able to get their kids into. And then on top of that, they're going to say, if you want them helped, you have to agree to this. Wow. Upon enrollment, a student may be initially placed in an educational setting designated by JRC as an alternate learning center, ALC, or small conference room, in a residence that is identified by the JRC as one of the most restrictive settings, characterized to a high staff-to-student ratio. The stated purpose for student placement in these restrictive settings is to control students who present with current behavioral difficulties, which require physical intervention at a high rate, and for whom substituted judgments have not yet been obtained. The majority of staff in the ALC and small conference rooms are mental health aides. You know, the mental health aides that get 3 fucking weeks of training. JRC employs a total of 386 MHAs and 254 mental health relief aides in the school and residences. So we're putting them around highly vulnerable people, these barely out of high school aides who've had 3 weeks training. And we don't expect something horrible to happen? Most of these individuals, 468 of the total 648 MHAs and mental health relief aides, have completed only a high school education. Thank you, New York! It is during this initial restrictive placement at JRC that the frequency of behaviors is documented for the purposes of obtaining a substitute judgment for the Level 3 aversive procedures. So we're not going to blame the fact that we have unqualified, barely trained, incompetent staff with no experience dealing with these types of disabilities and mental health issues. We're not going to blame them for not having the first clue what the fuck they're doing or how they are actually supposed to treat those with those types of issues. No, we're going to blame the person who's having the behaviors based on their diagnosis. And we're going to use this as an excuse to go ahead and get permission to torture them. Wow. We're going to use our staff's absolute incompetence as a means to gain a court order to torture you. Fantastic. In this setting, interactions with students involved little to no instruction. Staff primarily attended to students' negative behaviors and employed the use of physical and mechanical restraints at a high frequency and for extended periods of time. And why do they do this, folks? Because they're completely goddamn incompetent. They don't have the training or the experience to be involved with these populations whatsoever. Just saying. One student's behavior chart documenting total inappropriate behaviors showed an increase from 800 per week during the first weeks of admission to JRC to an average of 12,000 per week. Clinician notes only document the number of inappropriate behaviors. They did not denote any positive behaviors or academic progress. Of course not. They want the judge to agree to torture. They're not going to show any type of progress. Why would they? That would mean that would make it a little less likely that they get to employ their freaking pet torture device. The data showed an increase in inappropriate behaviors is used to substantiate the need for Level 3 aversive interventions. I rest my case. And not for analysis to determine alternative forms of intervention. Thank you, of which there are literally hundreds, thousands. Clinician notes on at least 3 occasions indicate that the staff was anxiously awaiting court approval of the use of the GED to help the child more effectively. That's because they're incompetent of the highest order. They are going to highlight all the quote-unquote inappropriate behaviors and do everything that they can to encourage those behaviors to surface so they have an excuse to use their pet freaking torture device. I rest my goddamn case. Level 3 aversive procedures used by JRC staff. Upon receipt of parental consent, JRC applies to a Massachusetts probate court through a substituted judgment petition to use Level 3 aversives in the student's behavioral program. Level 3 aversives constitute a broad spectrum of punishment techniques that include movement imitation, mechanical or physical restraint. Yeah, that would be what we call stimming, folks. It's something that a good majority of us who are on the autism spectrum do. And it, by the way, doesn't harm anyone. But it's inappropriate, Tiffany. How about this for inappropriate? Contingent food, starvation, helmet, sensory deprivation, and electric skin shock were going to cause as much pain as humanly possible. The use of behavioral reversal lesson and combined use of aversive techniques are also Level 3 interventions. Now remember, what is behavioral rehearsal lessons? For those of you new to this case, let me explain it to you. Staff will threaten a student. They will jump out at them with knives or pencils, grab and scream at the said student, threatening them. If that student then proceeds to scream, they are shocked. If that student proceeds to fight back, they are shocked. If the student does anything other than just stand there and take it, they are shocked. I wish. And later on, if they stand still and do nothing, guess what happens? Yeah. Substituted judgment process. Pursuant to a settlement agreement between JRC and the Massachusetts Office for Children, Level 3 aversive procedures are permitted for use at JRC only when authorized as part of a court-ordered substituted judgment treatment plan for each individual student. The settlement agreement states that any substituted judgment proceeding, the court appoints a monitor who will report to the court as to the effectiveness of the treatment plan. How many of them think those monitors tell the truth? Because I don't. Adherence to orders by JRC and any proposed modifications to the treatment plan. The settlement agreement also requires an ongoing training and supervision of staff by a doctoral level psychologist and treatment approaches as a method of minimizing the use of restrictive procedures, including passive behavior management, functional communication, analysis of stimulus control, and analysis of consequence control. Electric skin shock. The most common level 3 aversive procedure used at JRC is skin shock, in which one or more electrical stimulations are administered to a student after he or she engages in targeted behavior. Skin shocks are delivered through a graduated electronic decelerator device that consists of a transmitter operated by JRC staff and a receiver worn by the JRC student. The receiver delivers an electrical current to the student's skin upon command from the transmitter. Electrodes are burned by the student on various parts of the body, notably the arms, legs, and stomach area, and can range in a number and placement dependent upon the student's behavior program guidelines. Students wear the GED device for the majority of their sleeping and waking hours, and some students are required to wear it during shower bath time. Think on that. You're not even free in the damn shower. Not to mention, is it really smart to be getting electronic devices wet and then they wonder why they malfunction? The GED receivers range in size and place in either fanny packs or knapsacks. Staff carry the GED transmitters in a plastic box. Students may have multiple GED devices electrodes on their bodies. For example, one NYC student's behavior program states, C will wear 2 GED devices. C will wear 3 spread GED electrodes at all times and take a GED shower for her full self-care. Fucking sick bastards. The GED manufactured by the JRC. While the JRC has information posted on their website and written articles which represent the GED device as approved, it has not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Thank you! And if anyone's wondering, it is still not approved. In fact, the FDA is right now appealing the DC Circuit Court overturn of the ban on those very devices. The GED 3A and the GED 4, hear me, has not been approved or licensed by anyone. Whew. FDA has declared the device for marketing as substantially equivalent to the devices marketed for classified as for aversive conditioning devices. They all should be destroyed. Anyone who thinks it's a good idea to punish people for living while being disabled or having a mental health issue, below in the longest, fucking, darkest, last circle of Dante's hell. Just saying. FDA's clearance prohibits JRC from representing the device as FDA approved. JRC's GED was modified from other similar devices on the market by doubling the intensity, amperage, and voltage, and increasing the duration by 10 times, from 0.2 to 2 seconds, of the shock administered, and by expanding the positions on the body where the electrodes could be placed. Of course they did. JRC also uses a device called the GED-4, which applies an even greater intensity shock to the student when a student fails to respond to the lower level shock. FDA recommended warnings on the GED device include statements that the device is to be used only or by or under the direct supervision of an appropriately licensed professional as part of an overall therapy program. The GED should not be allowed to become wet or submerged in water. The electrode must be properly located and secured to the skin and never placed on the chest or breast, genitals, head, top of hand, top of foot, the lower quadrant of the buttocks, or any area of skin that the patient is known to be unusually sensitive or subject to allergic reaction to contact with stainless steel. The instructions must be thoroughly reviewed and fully understood by the operator therapist and the supervising professional whenever the GED is in use with a patient. Explain why the fuck they then designate it to be used in the shower if it's not supposed to be submerged in water. Make it make sense! They go against their own damn rules. A regular program of training and review for anyone operating the GED is necessary. A review of the GED manual by each operator no less frequently than once a month is strongly recommended. The site review team was informed by JRC staff that most students have behavior programs that require two-person verification of a behavior that will result in a GED shock. There are students with 1.1 staff for whom two-person verification is not required. In other words, they lie out their ass. Who's surprised? Not me. At the time of the team's April visit, there was 148 NYS students enrolled at JRC. At that time, 77 were approved to receive Level 3 behavioral interventions from staff at JRC. Of these 77 students, 53 were receiving skin shock through the GED as adjustable with an average intensity of 15.25 milliamperes RMS. That's way more than the police taser. Remember that report we read a couple of days ago? 4 to 5 milliamps. That one, and it's caused deaths. These kids have to endure 15 to 45. A duration of 2 seconds to 2 seconds, and an average peak of 30.5 milliamps. Bullshit, they've revved it up. And 24 students are receiving GED, referred as the GED-4 skin shock, which has a maximum current, 45 milliamps RMS, an average pack of 91 milliamps, and a maximum duration of 2 seconds. The higher level shock is used when it's determined that students are not responding to the lower level of shock. Let's hurt them some more! Sick bastards. At JRC, an additional form of electrical circuitry is used to automatically administer a series of aversives as soon as behavior is initiated. Shocks are administered at regular intervals, every 1-3 seconds. The automatic negative reinforcement shocks terminate as soon as the behavior stops occurring. Bullshit. This device is not operated by JRC staff. For example, some students are made to sit on a GED cushion seat that will automatically administer skin shock for the targeted behavior standing up, while others wear waist holsters that will administer a skin shock if the student pulls his or her hands out of the holster. It gets worse! NYSED could not find shock device evidence, nor did JRC provide the evidence as requested that this automated electric shock device has been cleared for marketing by FDA or approved by the FDA. FDA regulations prohibit the use of aversive conditioning device that has not been approved or cleared by the FDA. Why are they not closed yet? Movement limitation. Movement limitation is another commonly used level 3 intervention that may be applied manually or mechanically. When applied manually, staff members physically hold the student. For mechanical movement limitation, the student is strapped onto some form of physical apparatus. For example, a 4-point platform board designed specifically for this purpose, or a helmet with thick padding and narrow facial grid that reduces sensory stimuli to the ears and eyes. Another form of mechanical restraint occurs when the student is a 5-point restraint in a chair. Students may be restrained for extensive periods of time, hours, or intermittently for days, when restraint is used as a punishing consequence. Many students are required to carry their own restraining bag in which restraint straps are contained. This is sick! Under the terms of the court order, the JRC must notify the court monitor if a student requires more than 8 continuous hours of movement limitation procedures in a 24-hour period. In addition, the court must be notified if the student spends 5 or more days in the movement limitation in a 7-day period. The school nurse stated that she is responsible to monitor any skin burns caused by the GED and abrasions due to restraints. And you're doing a bang-up job, sweetheart. She also advises staff on the positioning of restraints and potential complications for each student. Can we remove this woman's license? She has no business practicing medicine of any kind if she is condoning this, encouraging it, and even assisting in the torture of vulnerable people who are. What threat is a restrained person? When a person is on a 4-point board and they are strapped down, tell me, nurse, what threat are they? So much so that you tell them how to better access and torture? Wow. Based upon the nurse's recommendation, a student may be restrained in prone, seated, or upright position. During a classroom observation, the nurse was called in to examine a student who had complained of hand pain and swelling from the restraint the previous evening at her residence. The nurse provided the student with an ice pack for her hand, and the staff informed the review team that the student later received outside medical attention for the injury. The meeting minutes from one student's CSE meeting stated the student was unable to attend the meeting because she was in restraint. This was one of the students interviewed, and she stated that she needed to talk with her CSE chairperson regarding her behavior program at JRC, but was unable to attend the last meeting. On follow-up with the chairperson, the team learned that the student was in attendance at a more recent CSE meeting in May 2006, but was unable to participate because she could not control her sobbing. Yeah, that's what happens when one gets tortured. There's an emotional reaction. According to the chairperson, the CSE recommended at the May CSE meeting that this student be faded from the GED. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and stop there for this morning because I got things to do before I run up to Food for Less, and yeah, I don't want to be gone all day. So, this is a very interesting report, and it gives the lie to a lot of the things that the JRC claimed, just as I always believed an outside investigation would. With all the evidence from these court cases, from independent investigations that has been out there in the world for quite some time, the fact that this school is still standing and still doing it right now while we talk is beyond monstrous and insane to me. And on those notes, I'm going to go ahead and close out this morning. We don't get very many views on this channel, especially on this subject. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this morning. We will see you later this afternoon. And as always, we here at Smelling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.